okay, you're ready to go home. And I said, no, I'm not. You cannot send me home with my child. I am not equipped to take care of her, and I'm going to kill her.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining me. My name is Reesa and I'm your host. We are talking to real families about real stories here on The Real Family Eats, where we've got food for thought and thoughtful food. So let's eat. All right, everyone. Hey, today our guest is the lovely Rachel. Rachel, thank you so much for being a guest on the show with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, I am so excited to, one, get to taste and cook your yummy recipe, but also to hear a little bit about your story and some of the experience, the real experience that you had on the parenting side. But first, for anybody who's not familiar with you like I am, can you introduce yourself for us?
Yes, my name is Rachel. I always forget how old I am, to be honest. I think I'm 42. I might be 43. Who's counting, right?
Yeah,
Let's
who's
be real.
counting?
I have two girls, 19. She's 19 and 15. I am divorced. I was divorced my husband in 2018. And so it's been me and my girls living the crazy single mamahood since then. So I currently work at a place called Lake Forest Hearing Professionals, and I have started going back to school for medical billing and coding, and still trying to figure out how to keep my little toes and hands in what I did previously at my old job with working with kids and students. So
Very cool.
that's me.
And I know that kids and students is how we met. So you've kind of been in that world for quite some time.
Yes.
Okay, so before we go into your story and a little bit about your journey, what recipe are you sharing with us today?
So we are a steak and potatoes family. Pretty much like that is what we eat. My youngest is a type 1 diabetic, which is part of a huge part of our story now. And so we try to do a ton of protein, but she is also my carb loader and can't live life without carbs. And so we manage that with a little bit of potatoes on the side because she loves potatoes. So this is one of her favorite recipes.
Wonderful. So get me started on what are some of the steps that I'm going to be doing here at first, and then I can get cooking while we chat a little bit about, as you mentioned, your story today.
Yeah. So just putting the steak in the pan and kind of, I don't even know the right terminology for it. Is it searing it up? We cook it. That's
Sure.
all we do.
Okay, we
just put it in there.
I can
we
cook
put
it.
A little bit of this. We put a little bit of that, and then we just make it.
Yes. Am I putting oil in or butter?
We do oil, but you can do butter, whichever.
I got some nice avocado oil here. That's what I have.
That's fancy.
Well, I'm in California now, you know. I had to simulate. Okay, so I'll do this, I'll sear that, and then once I've got it all seared, is there anything else that I need to worry about doing? Put that on the side and kind of do my potatoes.
Are you doing like real potatoes or like box potatoes? Because we do box potatoes sometimes.
So I've already boiled my real potatoes.
You're so amazing.
No, I got the little steamer guys. I left the peels on. You know, that's the real what I had time to do today. Okay, so I'll do that then with my potatoes as well. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Cool. Okay, so while I get this started, I know you mentioned your kiddo who has the type 1 diabetes. So when did that journey? I mean, because that's unique in itself, and I imagine brings a whole nother set of challenges outside of just being a teen mom, which in itself, I feel like I have so many parents that are like, Ugh.
Yes. So we got divorced in 2019. It was official.
Okay.
She, her and I got super, super sick in 2020. And it takes like, I have to be dying in order to miss work. Like, I don't miss work. It's just what my grandmother instilled in me very young. And
Mm.
we were on the couch for a week solid.
Oh
She was out
wow.
of school. I didn't go to work. We didn't get tested for COVID. It was 2020. No idea. It could have been COVID. Who knows? I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe it was a bad flu. I don't know. Anyways, um, so after that, she had started to lose a ton of weight, but she
Okay.
was eating food like crazy. I would make dinner and she would have a full plate. And then
Okay.
an hour and a half later, she's like, I'm hungry. And so we would get into a fight because I was like, there's no way you're hungry. You just
Mm.
ate an entire meal.
Yeah.
And she's like, I'm hungry. And then she would eat another entire meal and she would eat and eat and eat. And I was like, okay, this is so weird. She
Mm-hmm.
would drink a ton of water, a ton, which I'm a water drinker. So I was like, yeah, girl,
Yeah.
so healthy.
Let's stay
You're
hydrated.
rocking. You're doing amazing. I'm so proud of you. And then I'm with her all the time. It was
Okay.
COVID, so we were home doing
Yeah.
school from online, which let me tell you, oh, good golly, Miss Molly. Anyways, so I
That's a
didn't
whole
really
nother
notice.
episode.
Yeah, I know. So I didn't really notice a ton,
Okay.
but one day it was really warm outside and we were going to my aunt's house and she put on a pair of shorts and this shirt. And I just looked at her and was like, something is not right.
Hmm.
And so I looked at my oldest and I said, if we're going to my aunt's house, we're going to my Aunt La's. I said, if La says anything about Kaya, I'm taking her to the doctor tomorrow. And so we walk into my aunt's house. She pulls me aside and she goes, what is wrong with Kaya? And I was like, going to the doctor. So then I
Okay.
called the next day. They got her in that day because I had given her all the symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
We had gone into her pediatrician and she did a P test to find ketones. And she said, I think she's got diabetes. And I
Oh
thought
wow.
she had a cafe au lait spot when she was born, which we were told could turn into leukemia at point. So that's
Okay.
always in the back of my head. So I was thinking she's got leukemia. Like I already prepped myself. Like I already had the journey in my head. I was like, this is what we're going to do. It's going to be fine. We're going to figure it out. And she's like, so she's got
That
diabetes. I'm
sounds
like,
so
she's got what?
scary.
Yeah, but I'm like, okay, I got a plan. It's going to be fine. I
Okay.
got a plan. It's going to be fine. And then she's like, I think she has diabetes. And I'm like, what is that? I
Yeah.
wasn't ready. Um,
Wow. So was it, because I heard you mention, when you went over to your relative's house, like that was kind of your go sign. Was that because you were looking for kind of that second opinion? Someone else is also saying,
like, is it
"Hey,
just
I think,
me? Do I like something is different, but I can't put my finger on it? But if my
yeah,
aunt can notice it right away, then that's obviously what it is.
gotcha." So I'm curious. Aside from going, what is diabetes? I have no idea what you're talking about right now. What else? I mean, as the doctor explained, kind of as this is unfolding, I'd love to know kind of what was going on for you as mom, like up in your head. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
So I'm not a panicker. I don't panic. I like to have a plan. And so in my head, she's saying all these things, and in my head, I'm formulating a plan. And I would repeat back to some of my thoughts and things. And the doctor looked at me and she said, I've known you since she was born. You are planning in your head right now. And I said, yeah, of course I am. And she goes, you have to stop. And I said, why? And she goes, because there is no plan for diabetes. You have zero control. So right now, you are trying to get control over something that is going to make you insane. So you have to understand right now in this moment, you do not have control over this disease.
Mm.
And I was like,
So
oh,
I know you because we go way back. The idea of not having that control, like you said, you're a planner. I mean, that's got to be such a wild shift and so kind of maybe even just off-putting, off-settling in that sense.
it was. I felt this lump in my throat of like, and I just knew that that was actually a legitimate statement. I don't know how I knew it. I didn't know all the ins and outs. I mean, I knew what diabetes was, but I
Yeah.
didn't know the depth of what it is.
Okay.
And so they sent us to Lurie's Children's Hospital that night. We had to check her in. She was she wasn't super high in comparison to some people that I have talked to. She was at 900. A normal range is 80 to 150.
Oh, wow.
So we got admitted into Lurie's that night, and then it became very real. That first night, I just cried. I did a lot of crying. I'm gonna cry now.
But that's
I
real,
remember,
right? And I have so many parents that have said that too. Same here. Like, oh, I'm gonna cry, but I think we forget that we are humans. We've got our own emotions, and we
yeah,
absolutely do cry. Half
yeah,
the time, our kids are crying. We're sitting there right there with them, going, "I don't know how to help you
crying.
either. You're crying." Yes, that is so
Yeah,
incredibly real.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then the next day came, the first 24 hours, the nurses took, not even the first 24, I want to say it was maybe the first 8 hours, the nurses took total control. And then they said, all right, let's go. Let's go what? We're going to
Yeah.
train you how to do this. I'm like, I'm going to kill my child.
Oh
And they're
wow,
like, no, you're not.
that's so scary.
We're going to figure this out. So they immediately started showing me injections and poking her finger and reading her glucose monitor and going through all the things. And we had a training that was a few hours long at the hospital at 2 different times. Her dad had to come down because there were 2 separate households and they wouldn't release her if he didn't come down for training because she
Oh
slept at
wow.
his house times. So we were both down there doing all the training. And then we stayed one more night and the next morning and they're like, okay, you're ready to go home. And I said, no, I'm not. You cannot send me home with my child. I am not equipped to take care of her and I'm going to kill her. And they're like, you are not going to kill her. I said, yes, I am. Like, what if I don't wake up in the middle of the night? Like, what if she falls so drastic and she doesn't even know what it feels like? And I'm sleeping and I don't wake up to my alarm to check her finger and then poke her finger in the middle of the night to check her numbers and she falls into a coma. And they're like, you are thinking worst case scenario. I said, right, that's how my brain goes.
Mm-hmm.
I said, you can't give me her. Like, you can't let me take my daughter home. It's just, you can't do it. And they were like, you're going to be fine. You're going to figure it out. It takes time. It's trial and error. And I was like, trial and error is going to kill my child. There is no trial and error.
Yeah.
And
I can
so,
absolutely appreciate that. Like you said, with your own kid, like it's one thing when you're like at work and you're learning a computer problem and it's trial and error. Okay, it's we'll figure it out. But like you said, that's my kid. Like no, it's not it's not a trial or error thing.
trial or error. And
Yeah.
then we got home and the first probably I got in touch with some people right away. They partnered me with some great groups and support groups. I had posted on Facebook, and I had a girlfriend who also had a daughter who was type 1. And so
Oh
she
wow.
put me in touch with this mom's group immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And the outreach was amazing. I think it honestly gave me a little bit of hope in the midst of all the crazy of trying to figure out all this newness and what can we eat,
Mm-hmm.
what we can't eat, how much insulin do we give, when do we poke our finger. They introduced me to this thing called Dexcom, which is a glucose monitoring system that she wears on her body.
Okay.
um, at the time I had called and our insurance didn't cover it, and then
Oh wow.
I had been praying like, God, we need this.
Mm-hmm.
I need this. She needs this. Like, how is this going to work? And I have no idea how it worked. I am a strong faith believer. I have a strong foundation in my faith with God. Prayed, 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 prayed. My team at work was praying. My prayer partners were out there praying. All of a sudden, the following week, it showed up on our doorstep, completely paid for, after my insurance company kept telling me that it wasn't going to be covered.
Oh, wow. That's
It was
incredible.
amazing. Got her hooked up with Dexcom, but that week that we didn't have it, I literally did not sleep because
Mm.
I was so afraid of her numbers not being where they should be in the middle of the night and me doing something wrong, that the anxiety from that, I didn't sleep at all. And
Yeah.
at that time, I had my girls all the time. They didn't go with their dad because he just wasn't ready to help care for her at that time.
Hmm.
And so my aunt would come over for a couple hours during the day just to let me sleep. And then she would have to go back to work and I'd have to figure it out.
So, how
And
old is your daughter at this point?
she was 11. It was 3 days before her 12th birthday.
Oh, wow. And
And the
what a way to have a 12th birthday. Man.
she kept begging the nursing staff. She goes, "If I'm still in here for my birthday, will you guys bring me a cake?" And they
Oh,
were like, "Yes." She goes, "Can I even eat cake?" And they
oh,
were like,
baby.
"Yes, you can have cake and we will give you cake."
Yeah. Oh my goodness. And so you went, you're now, like you said, kind of 12 years out of the infant stage, and it sounds like kind of right back in it to those sleepless nights of just like on edge. Is my baby okay?
Mm-hmm. But still, even now, 4 years into it, I get, if I'm lucky, 3 solid nights of sleep a week.
Wow.
Um, Her numbers go off in the middle of the night, whether she's dropping or whether she's completely out of range and high. I have to go in and give her an injection, or I have to wake her up and give her juice or milk or something to make her numbers rise. And
Mm,
it's a fight. She
yeah.
doesn't realize it, but we will fight at 2 o'clock in the morning. She refuses to drink or eat anything. And I'm like, "You have to get up and drink." The next morning comes along. She has no idea. She doesn't remember fighting with me. And so to me, it becomes hard because I'm fighting with someone who doesn't remember, and I'm
Yeah.
trying not to get angry at her, but I'm also tired
Mm-hmm.
from no sleep. And it's just one of those circle things that just keep, it's like a hamster wheel. And I have to
Yeah.
learn a ton of grace with her.
I'm so curious. You mentioned kind of that difficulty, like you said, to kind of wake up and have this interaction that hopefully, at this age, you're hoping that they're learning and then we're adapting and being able to kind of move out of that fight. And then, like you said, to then, in the morning, she go, "I don't even remember this." So, she isn't necessarily cognizant to be able to kind of learn or to apply, any skills in that sense, it sounds like, to be able to grasp the importance of what you're trying to do in that moment at 2 a.m. in the morning.
She doesn't grasp the concept of it generally.
Mm,
Her endo and I have multiple conversations. She has to want it, and she's a teenager. She doesn't want to be different. She doesn't want things on her body that makes her different than someone else, which is why she won't get a pump. And everyone's
yeah.
like, "Well, you should make her get a pump." I'm like, I can't make her
Yeah.
get a pump on her body. Like,
Yeah.
think about what you say before you speak, because that just doesn't make sense. It's like, I can't force her
Have
to
you
put it on
met
her
a
body.
teenager?
Right. Have you met a teenager? Have you made a teenager do anything that they want to do? Because it doesn't usually end well.
Yeah.
Um, and so her endo's like, you're gonna have to prep yourself probably for a hospital visit. She's either gonna pass out or she's going to go into DKA, where she's so high that her body starts to shut down. Like, she's
Wow.
just a teenager. And so the reality of it is that's where I'm at. I can't
Yeah.
force her to take care of herself. I can show her, I can tell her the importance of it. But do you tell any other normal teenager the things they should and should not do and then watch them perform all the things that they should and should not do?
Yeah.
I mean, let me know because I need some help.
Right? There's got to be a magic sauce in there somewhere.
Right? There's got to be
Yeah.
something.
Something. I
So
mean,
yeah.
is that scary for you as a parent to kind of in this moment, your heart outside of your body are making these choices that on the high level are developmentally appropriate. We can comprehend and go, yeah, it totally makes sense. You're at a point where you're learning that autonomy and finding that independence to be able to make your own decisions at the same time. Like you said, knowing that they are very big decisions having to do with health, which is a big thing. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm so curious as a parent, is that scary?
Freaks me out. But what am I going to do?
Yeah.
One of the things that I've learned and that what the doctor said stays with me is that I'm trying to control something that I have zero control over.
Yeah.
And it's easy to say, very easy to say, but when you're living something that you have no control over, I can give her applesauce one night when she is at 40, which will bring her to, let's say, 80, which is a normal range. I can give her the same applesauce the next day at the same point, and it will shoot her up to 200 points, and then I have to give her insulin to bring her back down.
Wow.
You have zero control over it, and it doesn't matter. And so even the endo tells me you can't control it, so you need to stop because you are going to make yourself crazy.
Wow. And can you, for anybody who's listening, because I think many would be in a similar boat as you, where like on a high level you've maybe heard about diabetes and have a general sense, but what has been your experience of what does that actually mean? What does like a day-to-day look like for you as a parent of a child with type 1?
Day to day are several injections, trying to get her to stay in range. We used to weigh her food all the time.
Okay. And why is that important? Yeah.
Because you have to know how many sugar grams, how many carbs are in each serving that you give your child, because that's dependent on how much insulin they get. And so you're constantly weighing and looking at reading labels. It's like having a child with allergies. You want to make sure you read the labels really well. It's teaching them a ton of math. You have to know how many carbs you're eating, and then you have to divide it by a specific number, and that's going to give you the amount of insulin that you need to take.
Oh, wow.
And so it becomes very much of a math game too. And I hated math. So when they're trying to tell me like, this is going to be a math game, I'm like, you don't understand.
What?
I hate math.
Yeah.
And they're like, you're going to get really good at it. And I'm like, that's not one of my goals in life. So just so you know.
That's not on my life plan. So.
Not on my life plan. Not on the one thing that Rachel wants to learn. I don't.
Right.
Not really interested.
Wow. And so when those, like you said, those drops happen or the spikes happen, for you, kind of what's the thought process? What's going on in your head in those moments?
So again, I'm not a super panicky person. We were she plays volleyball for club. And this was probably the one time where I panicked. So she was up, her Dexcom was reading one number, but she was starting to act super funny. She was slurring her words. She couldn't stand up straight. She couldn't walk in a straight line. And I was like, there is something wrong. And I poked her finger. She was at 26, which is extremely dangerously low.
Okay.
We were walking up to the parking garage to get back into the car, and she couldn't walk. It was just me and her. One of her volleyball teammates, by the grace of God, literally was not far behind us, but we didn't know that.
Okay.
I kept making her sit up, and I was like, Kaya, look at me. You cannot fall asleep. I need you to stay awake. I need you to keep looking at me. I need you to keep talking to me. And she's like, I just want to lay down. I just want to go to sleep. And I'm like, not an option. We had exhausted all of our sugar and carbs, everything she had already eaten. And then her Dexcom was so far off that I didn't think we needed anything before we
Okay.
left the gym. So
Wow.
I didn't have anything. I had nothing.
Yeah.
Her volleyball teammate walked up, and I looked at her mom, and I said, I need you to sit with her, and I need you to not let her fall asleep or lay down. And she saw her finger poke, and it said 26. And so she's freaking. And I'm like, no, 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 no. If anyone gets to freak, it's this one. You get to hold it together. I just need you to stay with her. So I ran to get the car, picked her up, and I don't even remember how fast I was going, but I know it wasn't the speed limit, to the nearest Culver's and just eat ice cream and gave her pop. And she didn't have to have any insulin because that's how low she was. And typically with ice cream, she has to have insulin. She's not a big pop drinker, but she has to have insulin. It's primarily sugar. And so she didn't have to have any. And in that moment, that was probably the scariest moment.
Yeah.
Where I knew my insides were in panic mode. But I couldn't do that because it wasn't the time for me to panic. Because she needed help. I had to get my stuff together because it's not about me. I had to figure out and get her under control. And then after that, I cried.
Yeah.
I cried the whole ride home.
Has that been difficult to kind of, because what I'm hearing from you say, and let me know if I'm off base, is that it sounds like fairly frequently you are having to kind of hold whatever big emotions are naturally coming up for you as a parent, kind of watching your kiddo go through these things in such, drastic swings at some point, to have to hold on to that while you put the fires out, it sounds like.
I think that's pretty normal. And maybe that's just my normal.
Okay.
Could just be my
Why do
normal.
you say that? Yeah.
Because I think how I have always imagined it is your kids get to have big emotions, but you get to be that calming sense and that calming presence that allows them to process and have those moments. But if you're both having them at the same time, how is that helping either one of you?
Yeah.
And so I very much am like, okay, let me figure your emotions out. Let's get you in a safe space. And then I'll have my moment. But we can't have a moment at the same time because things are going to fall apart. and I mean, I would imagine that other parents feel this way too, but being a single mom, like there are some things that I just don't get the opportunity to fall apart until it's my turn. And not all the time is it my turn right away.
What I really love, though, it sounds like in those that you have been able to kind of find that balance and still allowing yourself, it sounds like, that permission to have your own emotions. Yes, you may have to like push pause for a moment, but that it sounds like you've been able to find a way to give yourself that permission that it's okay to also have your own emotions. And that stands out so much to me because I feel like I've talked to so many parents where sometimes they forget that part, or maybe they don't feel entitled to have that part of still having your emotions, and just quickly try to wrap it and go, no, it's not there, let me kind of brush it, I don't have time for it, whatever that narrative is for them. And so I'm so curious, like, what for you was kind of maybe the aha moment? Has it always been that way where you've been good about allowing yourself to have emotions and space and time for those as well? Or is that something you had to learn?
That is something I had to learn. I was a bottler. I didn't have emotions. Emotions are stupid. I am not dealing with them. I am not processing them. It's not happening. We're going to put you in a little bottle and we are not going to talk about it.
Yeah.
I had at my old job, my old campus pastor, literally for a year worked on me about, you need to talk about your emotions. We're going to talk about things. We're going to dive in, and literally broke me. And I was like, I don't like this. All I do is cry now. Everything
this feels
happens.
uncomfortable.
I never cried all the time. I cry all the time now. It's awful. But
do you think that's because it is a release? Like it's now like, we
get
to come out.
Because it's a release. So now I just cry all the time. It's amazing. Everybody knows that get Rachel going and she will cry. It's guaranteed.
Yeah. And I though, how normalizing though, to maybe have that scene in you and maybe inspire others that it's totally okay. It's not a reflection. Having those emotions isn't a reflection on your character, on how you are as a parent or anything. Instead, it sounds like it normalizes you almost.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I remember someone had said to me is that your daughters see you strong all the time. They think you can do anything, but you are human and you have a limit. If your children don't see you having limits and having moments where you can't hold it all together, they're going to have an unrealistic expectation of where they need to achieve, that they have to have it all together, that they can't fall apart, that they don't have permission to feel the feels or feel all the things if you are constantly trying to be Wonder Woman. And so that stuck with me a lot.
Yeah.
Because I don't want them to ever feel like they have to live up to an expectation of having it all together, because it's unrealistic and it's not real.
Yeah. And to hear that, I mean, that sounds incredibly powerful, to kind of be reminded and framing it in that way that, even if you're not necessarily willing to give yourself permission yet, doing it from that motivation of, this is really important message for me to send to my kiddos, and that it does kind of start with that modeling piece and really being able to demonstrate to them, this is what I want for you. So, gosh, how many parents are we much more motivated when it's about the results of our kids?
Let me tell you.
Right?
Let me tell you. I'm like, I know I don't do it. However, what I know is really healthy is if you do it like this, you're going to love it so much better, because I haven't mastered that. But if I can tell you and teach you and show you, you're going to be light years ahead of me.
Yeah. And isn't that, I feel like, what so many of us parents are striving for, right? For that growth for them, to raise those good human beings that we can look at and go, oh my gosh, the fact that you're able to do all these things that I didn't have the courage to do, I'm so in awe of you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. But it's not easy.
Absolutely, right? That's just it. It's not easy like it maybe looks like in some of the movies or on some of those socials.
It's not like real. It's all a facade. They lie. Yes. Have kids, they say. It'll be fun, they said.
It'll be easy.
It'll be easy. Really? Really? Really?
Right? Yeah,
let me have a conversation.
Like, yes, mom, dearest. And they're all so prim and proper. It's like, oh, that's what having kids are? Yeah. Right.
Wait, the dishes? You want me to do your laundry too?
No. Yeah. Absolutely. Okay.
You turn into have you seen Moana?
Yes.
The thing in our house is, don't make me turn into Taka. I want to be Tafiti. I really want to be Tafiti. Do not make me go Taka.
Yeah. Okay, I've got my pan. I've seared some of my meat. Am I putting my butter and my garlic in and kind of making like a little sauce? What am I doing here?
Yep. Yes.
Cool. Okay, I can do that. So I'm super curious. It sounds like you've had a lot of growing pains that you've had to kind of endure and figure out. And I know you mentioned some of those resources that you found that have been super helpful. Are you able to share a little bit more about what are those resources? Are they things that are available to other families that maybe we can kind of clue them in that maybe they're not aware of some of these resources? What did you find that works for you?
Mine are all primarily related to diabetes, just because that's
Okay.
my world that I live in.
Yeah.
So there's a ton of Facebook groups that I'm a part of. Windy City Parent, I'd have to look up the names. But if anybody
Okay.
wants to know them, you can always give them my email address and I can send that to them. Some of them are local to where I'm at.
Okay.
I've read some books on diabetes. I've done a lot of looking into things, asking questions at every endo appointment that we go to. I'm just a huge advocator,
Yeah.
and I'm a huge fighter. I am not going to go down without a fight. And so this is something I have to learn, and I'm going to figure it out because I'm not going to let my child suffer because I'm not willing to do the work.
Wow.
And it's hard. I'm not saying, and don't hear what I'm not saying, because that's what happens in the world we live in. We hear things that aren't being said. I'm not saying that every parent who doesn't do those things is not advocating for their child.
Mm,
I
that's a
just
great point.
know myself,
Yeah.
I am a go-getter and a non-stopper. And so I'm constantly wanting to learn and do new things. I'm a single mom. I work 40 hours, sometimes more a week. I also am in school full time right now. So my plate's full.
Yeah.
It's real. I have a daughter who plays club volleyball, my type one. She's in volleyball all the time, constantly at tournaments. We're driving all over by where we live. We go to tournaments in other states. Um, you master a schedule, you figure it out. With my older daughter, she's in college right now, so it's a little bit easier because she's away at school. But trying to find that time to spend with her so she doesn't feel so lost in the shuffle, because Kaya does require more from me than she does. And that doesn't mean that I love her less or that I love my youngest more. There is a requirement to care for her just differently. I don't love my children differently, but I have to care for them differently because they're different.
Yeah.
And that's just the reality of it.
Has that been difficult to balance that? Because like you said, it
Oh
does
yeah,
require. Yeah.
I'm awful. Like,
Hey,
there are
we're work in
days where
progresses, right?
my oldest will be like, "You don't love me. You love her more." And I'm like, "Listen up, Linda. That is not the truth. That might be how you are perceiving it. But the reality is that she doesn't have a pancreas. I'm it. I'm a pancreas now. Like, I should have a shirt that says, I'm a pancreas. I don't get paid for that job, but that's what I am right now.
Yeah.
So and it's educating her and having her understand. And yes, to her, it feels like I care more about my youngest. It's not the reality. But the reality is she requires more. You have a body that functions at total normal capacity and can do all the normal things. Your sister does not have a body that can function normally. And so we have to help her function to be quote unquote whatever normal is.
Yeah.
And so that just requires me giving her a little, and not, I wouldn't even say more attention. It's making sure she's educated and knowing what she needs to do.
Absolutely. And, that is, like you mentioned, kind of this idea that we can provide them all of these words and try to, again, educate them that I promise you, assure them I love you just the same. And sometimes it does make it, like you said, they don't always perceive it that way, and we can't, no matter how much we want to, kind of will them to perceive it. And so it is just kind of continuing to show up in the ways that we can.
Zero control, Reesa. We have
zero control. That's the theme of today's episode. Zero control.
Zero control. I'm telling you, that's what I tell any new family is like, you have zero control over this. Just let it go now.
And that's actually perfect, because I was going to say, if if we did channel, you had a DeLorean that could take you back, is there anything that now looking back you would tell yourself sooner, or that you would offer to any families that are maybe experiencing something similar, just getting their diagnosis, that you would offer?
It's going to be hard. It's going to be rough, but you're going to figure it out, because you want your child to be successful and you want your child to be the best version of themselves. So as a parent, you're going to do what needs to get done, but it's not going to be easy. Like, I have never been one that's going to tell you everything's rainbows and unicorns, the waterfalls, it's so pretty. No, it's going to be hard. But the world that we live in, we're not meant to live easy life. It's just not meant to be the way that it is. Things happen. Our world is broken. And so what are you going to do with it? Are you going to let it? This is just me. I know the world is not great, but I don't sit in the negativity of it. I choose to look beyond and see what the good is and hold on to that and cling on to that, while knowing my world is probably falling apart. But
why is that important to you?
Pardon me?
Why is that important to you, or needed for you?
Because it can put you down into a deep, dark hole really quick. And I am a naturally joy-filled person and happy. But just because I am joy-filled and happy doesn't mean I don't experience sadness, anxiety. Okay, Inside Out too. Let's talk about it. Like, I'm joy, okay? I get it. And I'm learning that sadness is actually something that you need in order to have joy.
Yeah.
So, as much as joy I want to have, I also know the reality of the world is things are going to go wrong. And so how are you going to figure it out? My grandma raised me to not be defined by your situation and figure it out. Pull up your bootstraps. We're going to figure this out. You're not going to sit here and you're not going to play victim. We're going to get up and we're going to figure it out. I had a tough love grandma who made a tough love kid.
Yeah. Well, what I'm hearing though you say is that it sounds like you're finding your way through that balance of still giving your emotions the time and the space, acknowledging them. Like you said, we're not just pretending, and putting them in that circle that they draw around sadness, right? And we go, this is the only place that you can have sadness. You stay. Exactly. We're working our balance. Exactly. At the same time.
Of work on me.
Right. Yeah. And then at the same time, it sounds like you're also kind of acknowledging that for the things that you do have a choice in and that you do get a say in, like you said, you're choosing to, okay, I may not know this, but I'm going to go out and read a book. I'm going to educate. I'm going to find myself that support. It's not easy, like you said, and maybe everything in me is going, don't do this. We can't learn this, like you said, with the math.
It does.
At the same time.
It literally tells you.
Yeah. And to be able to kind of say, that might be, my anxiety speaking right now. And anxiety, I hear you. I understand you're freaking out right now. But guess what? Like, we're going to figure this out. There is a light. Even though it looks like it's super far away, we can do this. It does take, it sounds like, kind of that one foot in front of the other kind of conscious decision to...
And baby steps. It doesn't have to be all at once. It has to be one step at a time to get you to the next hour, to get you to the next day, to get you to the next week. It doesn't have to, and you don't have to have a plan figured out for 5 years from now. Let's work on tomorrow.
Yeah. I think that's a great point, that sometimes, zooming in and kind of just looking at the right here, right now, what can I impact, can be helpful. And pretty soon, like you said, you've made it that week, you've made it that month, the years. But it does kind of take that, just like you said, that baby step of figuring out what is it that I can control in this particular moment, because there's a whole lot else, theme
Out
of
of
the
control.
day, out of control that I can't.
And it's
Yeah.
remembering too. It's looking back to say, what did you get through? Like sometimes
Mm-hmm.
you have to look in the rearview mirror and say, wow, look at all that I got through when I didn't think I could. And
Yeah.
acknowledging that and knowing that and calling that out and being proud of yourself for that. Because sometimes you need to be in your head telling yourself that you can do those things and you did do those things.
So your own cheerleader and having the self
Yeah.
compassion to do so, it sounds
Hmm.
like. Yeah, that's awesome. And all the while, like you said, we don't get paid for this job.
No, this is free,
What?
baby.
What?
I know.
Madness.
Crazy.
Well, Rachel,
Crazy.
I believe I'm done with my mashed potatoes, and I got my meat and my sauce. So I'm gonna put them
Sweet.
together
Mix it
for
all up.
loveliness. And I thank you so much, not only for teaching me this lovely recipe that I'm super excited to eat, and I know that my kiddos also very much love. I mean, my husband's from the Midwest too, so he's a meat and potatoes kind of
And
guy
potato kind of
also.
guy.
Yeah. So this is right up their alley. Um, and so I love that you were willing to teach me this recipe. I'm so grateful for you, and to even share your story and helping that cause of pulling back that curtain. We're getting rid of that perfect facade, as you mentioned, and really showing that
No one is
parenting,
perfect.
no
No
one
one.
is perfect. We have our warts, and it can be incredibly healing and helpful when we show them too.
Oh, people are gonna be like, this lady is crazy, Risa. They don't really know me, so they think I'm a
Hey,
nut job.
you know what? Aren't we all a little bit though? I think we
That's
have
true.
to be.
I
Because we
agree.
had children.
True statement.
Well, thank you so much. I so appreciate you. I'm sure I'll tap you for. I'm sure you've got many, many stories that you could share with us. But in the
Oh,
meantime, thank you so
no
much.
idea.
And thank you everyone for tuning in. We'll see you next time. If you or anyone that you know is struggling with any of the topics that we discussed in today's episode, make sure to check out our show notes for support and resources. You can get help. Thanks again for joining us on today's episode of The Real Family Eats. If you're a parent ready to share your real life parenting story, make sure to reach out to us in our website found in the show notes. And that goes for today's recipe, social medias, support, and resources. All of that can be found in our show notes. So make sure to check them out. And make sure to follow, like, share, subscribe, and stay up to date on all things The Real Family Eats. I hope you'll join us next time for more food for thought and thoughtful food. Enjoy your eats.